Welcome to Spotlight Net TV with yet another exciting episode of the Global Wired Women, the show that casts a spotlight on women challenging the status quo from all over the globe. With your host, Jennifer Nash, Global Visibility Strategist, Publicist, CEO, and founder of Arc and Brook PR. Jen's passion is to transform entrepreneurial women into visible experts with authority through authentic storytelling. Jen's mission is to feature trailblazing, underrepresented, and often marginalized female entrepreneurs, providing them with a platform to be seen, heard, lovable, and unforgettable. Here's your host, Jennifer Nash.
Well, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of the Global Wired Women. I am super excited. My name is Jennifer Nash. I am your global visibility strategist and PR consultant. And I am so stoked to have with me today Kathy Kasten, an amazing and inspirational leader. Kathy, welcome to the Global Wired Women show.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. Kathy, I know that you are a leader for leaders, right? So could you kindly introduce to our audience, who is Kathy?
So Kathy is a woman who's had a crazy journey. I jokingly call myself the corporate alpaca ice cream woman. The Lord has taken me on a journey through a lot of leadership pieces in my life, but I'm a CEO and founder of a company called Crest Leadership. And my work to serve high achieving professionals and entrepreneurs who really want to live, give, and love every day very effectively and really make a difference. So that's done through communication and leadership and legacy living as well.
I love it. I love it. So there's two things. Let me just write down before I forget, because this is a saying that I really love about you. So first, why Crest Lion?
Why Lion Crest? So I named Lion Crest Leadership because I am a Christian, and Lion is for Lion of Judah, which is a reference to Christ. And then the crest is because we're all part of the royal priesthood. And so I wanted a business name that always kept the Lord front and center in everything that I did, so that I would see those I served through his eyes.
I love it. I love it so much. Yes. Royal priesthood. Absolutely beautiful. What a kingdom to belong to. So don't get me started. So otherwise I'll be taking our viewers to church right now. So Kathy, what about that sentence that you say, give, love, and what?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've spoken on quite often is something called legacy. And I think as a culture or a worldwide view, even legacy is really, people think it's when we die, it's what we leave everybody. And I am redefining that. I believe it's how we live, give, and love every day, and how we take one step and how we live each day, right? So live, give, and love, and really making that an intentional part of each day we have.
I love it. I love it. So live, give, and love each and every day. Be intentional, be present. But yes. I also like the idea about a legacy is about when you're alive and not when you're dead.
Yes, because it makes you think about how you live each day. It doesn't become an accident. I often encourage people to think about, what do you want the people that you impact every single day to remember about you? What memories can you build right now? What things can you give them while you're present, and you can talk about that with them to really make that a more powerful legacy?
I love it. I love it because we share that same kind of vision. And this is why I founded my foundation, which is the HML Foundation, in memory of my dad. Bless him. It's already after he's gone. But this is my way of, immortalizing his legacy. And I wish that we were able to do that when he was still alive, because this came about with the fact that me and him used to exchange books. We had like our own personal book club. So the HML Foundation has been founded to actually help people to have access to books and literacy without, without being marginalized for whatever reason, whether they've got digital poverty or they just don't have access to internet or libraries.
I
So
love it.
again, the other aspect of what you said, which I like as well, is giving while you are alive. And this is again the reason why I created the Giver Awards, because it's a Global Ignite Vision Awards. It's about, you are a business person, you are still living and you're still making your money, but how are you letting that money impact those that are around you? How are you giving back to society? And don't let me go on a rant on that. So let's circle back to you. So I know that recently you had a book published. Tell me more about that book and what is the title. And if you want, you can put it on the screen to show our
Sure.
audience what that book is, because I was so stoked. So that's Ready, Set, Lead.
Ready, Set, Lead.
Exactly.
Yes. So it's a book for 4 to 8-year-old children, and it's illustrated and it has rhyme to it. And we've already won an award for it, which is exciting. It just came out. It's really about teaching children at a young age, and I would suggest even adults would benefit from this book, some of the traits of leadership, because leadership skills can be learned, they can be grown. People may have the mistaken thought that leaders are just born that way and the rest of us can't lead. I don't agree with that. I think everyone is born with some kind of leadership skill. It may be in a small fashion, maybe you're a big sister, or you're a Cub Scout leader, or you're the head of your classroom, something but there are also other ways that you lead often. And so learning what that looks like and how to learn those gifts, right? So things like being trustworthy, taking care of others in your community, reaching out and asking mentors to teach you. We've used different words because it's a children's book, but just some of those basic, letting someone else shine in the middle of a team event. It doesn't always have to be about me, right? Those kind of traits, we can start to exercise that thought process in young people right away.
Yeah.
And that allows them to, in time, grow into those spaces. Because as I looked across leadership and great leaders, I think we have the idea that great leaders are always the ones that are out there, they're loud, they're forceful, they're, running around a bit. And there are some of those leaders for sure, but there are also leaders that are very quiet and are very effective, and they handle it in a different way. Some leaders are very task oriented, others are very people oriented. So learning that you can be a leader in whatever style you have, and then how do I do that? What skills do I need? That's really what this book is about. And I'm so excited to be able to start that discussion with young people early in life.
I like it. I like it a lot. And as I said behind the scenes, behind the camera before we got on, that I believe that from the synopsis that you gave me about that book, I believe that you're doing it in injustice. You're doing every one of us injustice, because I think that we all need to read that book and go back to basics. Because as adults, we tend to have a predisposed inclination that we know everything. But as a child, when you have a child mindset, you're open to learning, and you're still open to not having any prejudices, and you just, you're a sponge, you just pick up things. So I strongly believe that book should be opened up, remove the age restriction, and open it up to adults, like so many adults, including myself. There would be so many things that I can learn from that. Because
I think it's a good springboard for discussions, right? About, am I doing these things? Do I live this as an adult?
Exactly. And to your point, the one thing that I really liked in the point that you just made is that a lot of people, and a lot of us, and I think including myself, we always feel like in order to be a leader, you've got to lead from the front. That's sort of like a concept that we've been given. It's a constructed concept. When in actual fact, as a leader, to your point, you can lead from behind the scenes. I really like that. Can you elaborate what you mean by that?
Yes, I think sometimes, and I've heard this quote, this actually came out of the John Maxwell team. He made the comment that if you're leading from the front and you look back and nobody is behind you, you're not leading. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think sometimes we think we're just going to drag everybody wherever we want to go. And that's what leadership is, right? We're going to drag them here and there, and they're going to do what we tell them. And that's terrible leadership. And I don't think that's what we're talking about. I'm talking about servant leadership.
Yeah.
And so servant leadership is really about, we're all going to go through this together. We need everybody on the team. Honestly, you and I, Jennifer, do not have all the skills we need for everything we do.
Yeah.
And so how do we bring in people to maximize the whole result? Iron sharpens iron, bringing minds together that can really support each other. I jokingly say, I love to think about going to someplace like Saturn because I'm a big picture, let's do something big and go far person, but you don't want me to build the rocket ship to get there because I'm going to start putting in the screws and then I'm going to be thinking about the next galaxy we can go to and I'm going to forget a screw, right? So we want somebody on the team. I would never get on my own rocket ship.
Yeah.
So I want somebody on the team then that has that strength that I don't have. So part of leadership is starting to recognize, here's my gifts. Now, what other gifts are out there? What are the gifts of every other person I'm interacting with? How can we lace those together to really have a strong, impactful, successful end that everybody's excited about and can support? I think that's really true leadership, is trying to really have the best result. Now, I will say there are crisis moments where sometimes a leader has to make a decision alone. I can't say that that never happens, so I don't want to rule that out completely. But wherever it's possible, to have that team mindedness is so powerful. I am better when I benefit from Jennifer's gifts, right? And the people we serve are better. And so that's where my mindset goes with leadership and how it works.
I love it. I love it so much. And so, I like the idea that you're saying, the servant hearts and putting, I think that goes with humility and putting other people's needs first, because I think that it's also in our innate build up DNA as human beings, that there's that selfishness as well, that we always feel like we have to go first. So I like when you explained about, like you always have to have a servant heart, and then sometimes, it's about the team, it's about taking the heat for the team and stuff like that. That's really brilliant. So before I just get so carried away with just discussing this book. There's so many other things that I want to discuss with you, and time wouldn't permit us to go through all of that if I continue this conversation the way it's going right now. So I'm going to leave it at that. People, if they need to read a little bit more about the book, I would encourage them to read your book and or buy it for their children. So just changing the topic a little bit. So tell me a little bit about what sort of traits and attributes do you have to be in the position that you are in? And maybe you could step back one more step with that. What brought you to this place where you're at right now to be coaching other people to be leaders? Tell me a little bit, give me an insight about your story so far.
Okay. Boy, this is a long, crazy story. It's longer than your podcast has time for. So let's see. Okay. To put it in a nutshell, I went to college for business. I've always had a leadership tendency, even since I was a young person, I wanted to make a difference and serve people. I went into corporate life. Within a few years, realized that I didn't want to stay in corporate life. I was being fast-tracked too quickly. My husband was also doing really well in his corporate job, and we realized we aren't going to have a life together. We're going to have a great life with a lot of money and travel, maybe, but to me, that wasn't a great life.
Yeah.
I married my high school sweetheart, so that was important to me that we keep that family connection. So I stepped out of corporate, and it's a long, crazy journey. I homeschooled a daughter who wrote books, and that was the first exposure I'd ever had to the book publishing world. And that's a different podcast today. But then I went into things like selling on eBay. I had an alpaca farm. I owned an ice cream parlor. I was looking for ways to be able to lead. And one of the things I want to say to everybody listening is, I think sometimes we get too caught up in what is the vehicle we're leading with. I have to, or that I need to have a certain amount of money to lead. It isn't about where you are. I was able to lead and make a difference in people's lives when I owned an alpaca farm. We would have bus tours come out, and I would talk to seniors with oxygen tanks and bring little alpacas on the bus. And right, there were all kinds of things we could do. When I had an ice cream parlor, there were oftentimes, I would joke, it was a local stopping point, almost like a pub would be, where people would come in and tell me about their life and what was going on. And it's not what you're using to serve, it's how you're serving while you're there. So I like to say, bloom where you're planted. So over time, when we had the ice cream parlor and my daughter had grown, I got quite ill to the point of near death. And I had to sell that and really think about, okay, have I been using the gifts? I had to go in for my first surgery of my life. I remember thinking as they were about to wheel me in, have I used my gifts to the best of my ability? Am I serving at a high enough level? If the Lord chooses to leave me here longer, how can I exercise that better? And so, as you can see, he did choose to leave me here longer. I have more work to be done on me, apparently. And so, it really was an exciting time for me to think about, I want to do this leadership business as a real full official business now, because I realize that there's so much need for it in companies. A lot of professionals and entrepreneurs are really struggling. They're trying to do all the things. They get overwhelmed. There's so much what I call oh shiny, right? Where everything looks good and we want to grab it all. And I'm able to help them to really come back and simplify and get clear on what is your purpose? What are your priorities? How do we maximize that in your business? How do we best serve your clients with the gifts you have? What do you not have that we need to bring in to help support you? All of those pieces came about. And so that's really how I ended up where I am today, and how Lion Crest leadership came about, and how the coaching and all of those pieces became a bigger part of my life.
Amazing. Amazing. This is so interesting. And I know that you've got more information on your website and stuff like that about what you do. But I just want to dig deeper a little bit, just if you can just help our audience to understand exactly what it is that, not exactly, but a summary of what it is that you do to help. How do you help those entrepreneurs to be focused? Because I think that is really important these days, in where a lot of us have got attention disorder syndromes, and
Yes.
we've got a lot of distractions from social media, but also in the recent events with COVID, people working from home, parents working from home. So we've got distraction and added dimension of distractions from the children at home. What would be the one sort of strategy or one idea or line that you would say to help somebody that is listening to this conversation right now, to help them just gather their thoughts? Or how would you help them?
Well, there's two pieces to that I'll give you as a really quick start place. One of them is I always have my clients take a DISC assessment with me. I have a company that I use that is heavily scientifically validated, that really helps us to understand a little bit more about how we're hardwired. And that matters to me because when I'm working with the client, I want to know what is it that really is some of their gift set, so that as we talk, I'm not talking in a language that doesn't make any sense to them, right? For instance, if you have somebody who really loves to work with people and I start talking to them about all the forms they have to fill out, they're going to glaze over right away and we're done and we haven't been able to help. So that's the first step. Every client I have take a DISC assessment with me. Mm-hmm. But then after that, one of the first steps that we do, and this is what I would encourage people to think about, take a piece of blank paper and draw a circle in the middle and put your name in it. And then maybe draw some little circles around the outside and pick, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 items and say, what are the most important things in my life? And keep it really big and broad. Like for me, my top 3 are faith, family, and serving others. So those might be some of my bubbles. It might be nature. It might be education. It might be, I love botany. I don't know, maybe it's, whatever, music. That could be another one. They're big bubbles. And from there, number them and think about, what is it that's most important to me? Why does that matter? That sounds really big and vague, right? Compared to a business. It matters because now we start to narrow in on what is the passion part of your life. When we get to, let's say, the last breath we're going to take, I don't want my clients to look back and say, wow, I wish I had spent more time X, right? I want them to have that thought process right now, so that when they're laying out their days and they're thinking about their priorities, okay, if faith, family, and serving others are my top 3, and that's the order they're actually in for me. If I come to a Y in the road where I have to choose, now I can go back to my priority list and I can say, what was most important to me? And, or maybe I have 2 family choices and I have to start to think about how you're starting to process through, what is it that's really important in my life? From there, we go into a whole strengths, gifts, and abilities discovery to talk about that piece. And then I would say the other piece that maybe would be a good quick takeaway for people in this audience is probably one of the top things that I spend time with my clients, no matter what background they have, because we're so overwhelmed. We write these big lists, or we have these big ideas that we're going to do. Like maybe it's, I need to buy a new car. Let's just throw that one out there. And I know that's not a work related one, but let's say we're going to buy a new car. That sounds big and scary. And it's like, okay, that's going to take a lot of time. And when am I going to find time to buy a car? And how am I going to figure out the budget and what color and what kind? And you're right. And all this stuff starts to swirl in our mind. I spend a lot of time helping them thin and thin and thin and thin down to one tiny little step. So maybe that one tiny little step for today is, why do I need a new car? You know, is it to take my children places? Is it because I need to haul big items? Is it because I need something tiny to fit in the space in the city that I drive? That's my step for today. That's it. Okay. My next step might be, okay, now that I know I need a tiny car to fit in the lanes in the city I live in. Okay. Is there a certain brand that I'd like? So maybe my next step is, I'm going to spend 10 minutes tomorrow going out on the internet and looking at reviews for the cars that fit that description. And that's it.
Yeah.
Right. And we keep taking these tiny little sequential steps. As I mentioned, I'm a big high reach for the stars person. This was one of the hardest lessons of my life. So if somebody else learns from this, I hope it helps them a lot sooner.
Absolutely. I think it will. I think it would.
I'm hoping what they're going to learn is, I thought that you just jump from here to Saturn. And that's what I would try to do. And that's where my mind always went. What I have learned through a lot of hard knocks and lessons is that when I take tiny little steps, I get there much faster, which goes completely against rational thinking to me, but it's true and it works. And so what I would say to the people listening is, the tiny steps, if you're overwhelmed, the steps are too big and you have too many priorities, narrow it down. What is your one big thing today that really needs to happen? Don't do the other 9 and leave the one on the table that was the one that should have gotten done.
Yeah, I like it. I love it, because I think it's also in the same vein, like taking the imperfect steps as well. Because a lot of people always feel like, and I think you alluded to that earlier on in our conversation, a lot of people always think that they have to have the perfect moment, the perfect setting, the perfect amount of money in the bank. They have to have all these perfect scenarios and environments, enabling environments, in order for them to make those little steps. So I think it's really very good advice to our audience, and I think it's also applicable whether it's in business or in life in general, to just be able to deal with those chewable chunks and go from there. So thank you.
Can I give you an example, Jennifer, for that? There was a person that I talked to that just came to me, and I thought it might be a helpful share. There was a gentleman I was talking to who came from an impoverished third world country, and his passion was to build a school in that country for children like him who hadn't been able to get to school. And I stopped him and I said, what's stopping you from doing that right now? And he said, well, I don't have the money, and, you know, I need the backing, and because he doesn't live there anymore. And I said, okay, but you go back to visit. Do you know one family in that country with one child who can't get to school? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, okay, go find a tree, sit down underneath it, take a book, and start a conversation with that child. Don't wait until you can build that whole school. Now, the school, I hope, will come. I think that's an awesome dream. But how about all the children that are getting missed right now while he's thinking about the school because he didn't reach out to them? So start with that one child. So for the entrepreneurs and the professionals that are listening to this, you can do a tiny step. A hug doesn't cost anything. A smile, a quick note, a nice card, right? Those are things that are very inexpensive that could really impact somebody quickly.
I love that. I love that. And to your point, I did exactly that. So in 2006, when I came up with the idea, in fact, I was in exactly the same situation as the gentleman you just talked about. So I was just moved from America, and George Bush had been president then. 2006, fast forward to 2006, when I was going back home, I loved the idea of No Child Left Behind program that George Bush had put in place. And I had been away from home 15 years when I went back home, I was like, right, I want to start a foundation that provides a space where no child is left behind and they can have access to education and whatever. But I had no penny to my name. But to your point, I'd literally started doing it like that. And fast forward to 2017, we were still doing pop-up libraries with a handful of children in my sister's living room.
Love it.
We started with 2 children reading books. By the time we were coming to the COVID shutdown, we were having 30 to 40 children coming in to read these books. And in terms of the books, at first I was paralyzed. I was like, where am I going to get books from? Before I knew it, every time I traveled home, I would take a handful of books, 10 books, 15 books, whatever, with me. The next thing, it just started doubling up. By the time I knew it, 2019, 18, I was shipping about 25 boxes with 3,000 books in them. So I really, really agree with what you're saying. You start small, handful, or just one piece of book. Before you know it, you're doing something bigger than even you ever imagined.
I
So
love it,
really
Jennifer. And I love that illustration so much because that's exactly what I'm talking about. Every single time we step out of our comfort zone, I mean, we're going to be uncomfortable. I tell people you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable because what got you to today is what got you to today.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to change anything beyond the moment you're in right now, you have to get out of your comfort zone. And we've done that our whole lives. When we walk, when we eat, when we get, go to school, when we get married, all of those are uncomfortable moments because they're changes. The last time you walk out of school or you leave a job or there's this whole shift, but over time you get comfortable again. So for the people that are listening, if you have a dream and you have a desire to do something in your heart that was placed there, I believe we have God-given gifts within us that God wants us to shine. And so, whatever that gift is, in this case, with this beautiful idea of the books, starting with one book and one child in your living room, great. And then just let it go. I mean, who knows what difference one child can make? I know a young child, well, he's a grown man now, a different grown man that came from, again, in another third world country who was very poor. He is now has a doctorate and he lives in the United States. And that was because somebody believed in trying to help him step forward. And now he's making a huge difference in the world. That's one child, right? So we don't know, even if you only help one child, we don't know that that one child won't help a lot of other people.
Absolutely.
So that's so beautiful. I love that story. It's great.
Thank you so much. Well, it was your idea and it just spurred me on. I was like, so that means I'm not that crazy, right?
Well, we're probably a little crazy. I think you have to be a little crazy.
It's been such a joy talking to you, Kathy. I could go on and on having this conversation. I would like to invite you for an extension of this conversation another time. I'm afraid we've run out of time right now. So if you had to just give one sentence piece of advice to anybody that's listening, what would that sound like?
It would sound like today, stop, take a breath and ask yourself, if this were my last day, what is one thing that I would really want to do to make it impactful? Because I feel very fulfilled every day. If this is my last day on earth, I'm really happy with it. Not that my life goes perfectly. There are struggles and hardships, but there's a great fulfillment in living your purpose every day and caring about the people around you. So stop for a minute, stop the hamster wheel and just think, okay, for the rest of today, how can I do one thing that really is important in my life?
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for everything and for who you are, Kathy. I really appreciate you and love you. And it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And I look forward to having more conversations like this with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Jennifer. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you and have a great day.